Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first voyage through the Little Green Man podcast here. A little bit about the Little Green Man. The thought process kind of happened through traveling in Europe, so it's a little off the standard. But I traveled through Europe, I noticed that there were all the cities built up on the hills, and the valleys were kind of empty. And if I had been someone from outer space and came down to ride with my friends in the car, I might have been saying, "Well, how come you built your cities up on those high points and put walls around them and different kinds of ways to hide behind the walls and do that? Was there a creature of some kind that you all had to defend yourself against?" And the answer would be no. We built those to defend ourselves against other people. And so, as a little green man, looking at it from a kind of a non-attached from a human non-attached perspective, it might be like, well, that's kind of interesting. Maybe I can get out and walk. I don't know if I need to keep riding with you people if you just turn on each other, but I think was mostly a commentary for me about how we as humans don't cooperate. We tend to compete more than cooperate. And so there's a balance somewhere in there, I think, between cooperating and competing, and bringing that into a thought process around sustainability and helping to help stepping in to provide solutions for the planet to kind of take it off this temperature change that we are involved in related to CO2 in the atmosphere. So came up with the little green man idea. We did as a team, Sierra, Ann, and myself, just to kind of poke through some of these thought processes. And the process we thought we'd start to talk about a little bit was kind of organizations. And this could be a government organization, it could be a private sector organization, could be a nonprofit, but sort of, hey, how do we all collectively cooperate to lower our carbon footprint or create more sustainable economies here on the planet so that if someone looked down on it from space, they might say, well, look, they're actually sort of cooperating in a way to maintain this home called Earth so that everyone can live on it and prosper. So that's how we ended up here, and just going to kick around a few thoughts.
And so today's episode is discovering your carbon footprint. And you want to kick us off with a question?
Yes, I would. I always love to ask Pat questions because you never quite know where the story is going, but you always know there's a point to it. So
It might go down a very strange rabbit hole.
you never know, and that's what makes us so fun and unique. And look at we just are who we are. So
Yeah.
my first question to our fearless energy green man is, Pat, can you explain the carbon footprint?
I can take a shot at it. Basically, why even be concerned about a footprint as an entity? I think there's more and more like pressure from younger people and hopefully older people like myself. Uh, there's a study from Harvard Magazine that was kind of saying that we needed to start to look at this as a kind of a we need to do well and make money, but we also should look to do good and solve social and environmental problems, and trying to find a balance between those two. But and a kind of a financial side to it could be this Forbes study, which said that increasingly businesses around the world are responding to a global imperative and consumer demands to go green, and more than 80% of people respect companies and brands that adopt eco friendly practices, according to an international survey. So, if we're starting to move towards an 80% of consumers looking for businesses and entities to be trying to at least move towards a green footprint in their business endeavors, I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, that there can be a financial differentiator for private sector business, and there can be some positive, different kind of aspects for public sector and governments to do this. The U.S. federal government and other governments around the world have strong initiatives to go green. So I think there's plenty of incentive to do this. And how you do it, well, at Seabury, the way we look at it is with our 6 Ds. And so before you do anything, you should measure it or discover what your carbon footprint is. And then we pull all that information in and then decipher it, which means kind of you're carrying it out from how you receive your power and how we might impact that, how we can impact some power savings within the entity, any recycling opportunities that might be there. Those are the types of things that we would start to look at. And then deeper dives into how to recycle IT equipment, how to work to maybe shift our fuels and things that we run as an organization more to a green renewable format, or uh, pieces that we're using for our manufacturing or our output, whether that's uh, fabrication materials that could be recycled and reused and repurposed, or working to use fuels that are more sustainable or recyclable and green, uh, just down to simple recycling of different things that we use as an organization, but looking how they can fit into a circular economy and be reused and repurposed. So we have to discover what our existing organization looks like, then decipher some of that, and then we'll start to develop some solutions for implementation that can mitigate carbon footprint, with our eye kind of keenly looking at these being cost saving measures actually that help to drive to the bottom line in any case that it's possible. That's how we try to look at it, is how to make this a benefit for making money and balance the do good, solving social and environmental problems. So throughout the process, we're always looking to uh, debrief on where we are. So at the end of a discovery, we do a debrief to see if we've missed anything. What did we miss? And then as we decipher, we do another debrief at that point to see if our assumptions and some of the solutions we're developing make sense. And then finally, of course, at the end, we'll do a debrief on how we did, what we did well, where we should go back and maybe do some additional activities, or where we did things well. So in a rough, random way, that's sort of what we're talking about. But it all has a nice wrapping following the 6D methodology that we use in our projects.
Right. One of the things I wanted to ask, as you were talking about businesses, so I guess it's two questions. Why and how should businesses measure? You're kind of talking a little bit about how green rolls over into the business sector, um, and what creates carbon. Why should we measure it? How do we measure it? And what is the end result for businesses if they have less of a carbon footprint? How does that affect the economy? How does it affect our air? How does that affect everything?
Well, I think it's first of all, it's a almost a human activity to reuse, repurpose, and seek to do things in the most sustainable way. As the population grows up towards 10 billion people someday on the planet, the planet doesn't even have enough resources to support all those people, potentially. So the more that we can take things like plastics and steel, woody biomass, products like that, and after they've been used in one kind of environment, recycle and reuse them at least into other types of project applications. So I guess the best way to talk about it is we've been working on a partnership with Carbon Rivers out of Tennessee, whereby Carbon Rivers has a methodology to take wind turbine blades, which have become a major problem in the world, and repurpose them back to the fiberglass mesh and different pieces of the wind turbine blade that can be recycled and reused. So today, like it or not, most wind turbine blades are just taken down after a 10-year run because they suffer from the issue of having that force of the wind upon them, and it affects the structural integrity of the wind blade. So you have to replace them every 10 years roughly. So they take them all down and they just throw them in a landfill. That's not really the right thing to do for the environment. First of all, anything you put in a landfill, it's not like you bury it and you walk away. There's more and more we're finding the PFAS and forever chemicals that are leaching out of the landfill and into the water that we're all drinking. And that's happening, across the United States. There's been a lot of litigation around PFAS in the water. You're seeing it in Camp Lejeune. I've seen it out at some of the Air Force bases in the western part of the U.S. There's some farmland in the Northeast that it's toxic to grow vegetables and different kinds of agricultural products on because they used human biosolids or solids from the wastewater treatment plant, human biosolids as fertilizer, and that fertilizer was laced with things that we process through our bodies that are called PFAS, and they're forever chemicals that get out into the land, and then we just recycle those chemicals from the land into the plants, and then the plants can go into the animals, and then whether we are eating the plant-based material or we're eating the meat of the animals or drinking the milk, it's all laced with this PFAS. And I think, the more that we can focus on helping to get rid of these things as any kind of an entity, it benefits all mankind. And so I think that's the main thing that we should be looking at. But the other side of it is we can do this and phase it to where it's sometimes even a profit more can drive more profit to the bottom line of the business.
I had a question, Pat. So how can Seabury help with that discovery process? Like what if I'm a business owner, how does Seabury start that process and what does it look like?
We would start it with a discovery process where we'd look at all of the 12 months of electric bills and see if there was a way we could impact that. It could be done by location. We don't think that's always just a solar solution set. It could be solar, it could be natural gas, it could be wind turbine, it could be a combination of different things to create power or natural gas solutions for an entity that would be green and maybe cost less money than what it takes to pull power from the grid that might be being produced by coal fire plants. So that's one of the benefits. The other pieces would be looking at the business and its objectives, like what is the business involved in? If you're involved in data, greening up the data centers that are running the calculations for AI and Bitcoin mining or just plain storage is a huge impact to the environment. One of the big problems out there right now is that there may not be enough power to off of the existing U.S. grid to power all of these data centers that are going to just come in and take massive amounts of computing power as AI starts to become more prevalent, in our day-to-day lives. So I think that's one of the things is just looking at the power. Within that, there's all kinds of savings that can be done on usage, which could be, from the lighting perspective, can be from like the timing and motion lighting when things are when power is being used. It can be recycling and reusing items that are in the manufacturing process. Like on the wind turbine example, there'll be what Carbon Rivers can do is take the old wind turbine, uh, downsize it, process it, and get all of the oils and the hydrocarbons that were used as the adhesives and the different material in that, and extrapolate that out into fuels to be used by industry again, and then to actually take the fiberglass and return it back to a mesh that could be reused in automotive parts or as a percentage of new wind turbine blades. So they're really able to do that circular economy where they bring a blade in and process it back to usable elements to be pushed back into industry and repurposed and recycled and reused. And I think that's one of the key things that most businesses have a way to do in some way, whether it's on the power or in their manufacturing process. there's always a way that reuse and repurpose and recycle can be, put into the functionality of the business, and then it can be kind of put out into the marketplace. If we're operating at a green kind of type of business, we're moving to be sustainable, and we're moving to create a circular economy to benefit the planet, and people that work with us and are purchasing our products can rest assured. And here's kind of what we're doing today to be a responsible corporation.
In talking about recycling those turbine blades, one of the big questions that we get is, since recycling those blades is a relatively new endeavor, is that a big expense to a company? Say you're, I don't know, you have a whole farm, a wind farm, and as things happen, especially up here in the cold north, you have a 120-degree swing of temperatures. Plus there's rain, there's snow, there's sleet, there's hail, all of that stuff. Well, when a blade cracks or breaks for whatever reason, is it extremely expensive to get those? I mean, is it really kind of how can I say this? Is it really more of a hindrance on the company to get that recycled and replaced? Or, I know being in the IT industry for many, many years, it's quite an expense if you're taking out like a data center full of servers and server parts and storage and taking the green boards out and such. Not only is it labor intensive, but it's just cost intensive to make sure that those IT machines don't hang out in a landfill, and we've all seen that at times they do. So there's the expense of being certified to do that, and there's making sure it goes down the river in the right manner and it changes hands. Is it very similar in the wind turbine recycling?
I'd say it is. I think they're taking it a little farther than IT, which maybe this can be the trend for all products, because the idea that you throw something in a piece of land and it sits there and it's safe is ridiculous. I mean, we're figuring
Right.
that out pretty quickly. Like, all that stuff's seeping into the water table. And so, but
Yeah.
anyway, so on the wind turbine blades, when the wind turbine blade is produced by a Siemens or a GE or some of the large wind turbine companies, the goal is to take that serial number off the wind turbine blade as it's produced, put it in a database,
Mm-hmm.
and then when that blade comes up at end of life, say in 10 years, it's removed. The new turbine blade is put on the wind turbine, production asset, and then there's a record of, say 306. We have like 4,586, right? Was produced on in 2010, and we're taking it off the wind turbine now in 2020, and I can reference where it was produced by Siemens, and then where we took it down off the turbine blade and put a new one on, which is a new one which will be referenced in the database, and then follow what happens to it. So that blade went downstream, was taken to Carbon Rivers, say, as a recycling process, and that blade was fully recycled. And it wasn't just put in a landfill somewhere in Wyoming and buried to later drip into the water and cause a bunch of problems, which is, how green is that really for everybody? So,
Yeah.
that is the challenge on everything, I believe, is to how to repurpose and recycle it rather than throw it in a dump. I think dumps should be, and they may very well become super fun sites for the government to clean up.
Yeah, Sierra, what is that place in your hometown, the
Oh, Mount Trashmore.
Mount Trashmore? We want to avoid any more Mount Trashmores and the gases that come out of each Mount of Trashmore. So, yeah, I mean, if you've ever gone to one of those places, it's really amazing as you kind of peek around and see. It's like, ooh, wow. I mean, there's it's huge. I mean, I think you sent a picture of Mount Trashmore, and it looks like one of the smaller mountains of 4,000 feet in Colorado. It's just crazy.
Right. And so the vision that we would have at Seabury would be to take all items to a central recycling center. So everything goes to a central site to be safely managed, repurposed, recycled, or kind of gotten rid of or destroyed. I wouldn't see, I'd see mitigating your trash that you bury. There'd always be some, like some kind of metals or different things like that you can't combust, but you can use. In the 90s in the United States, we were getting kind of big into taking garbage as a feedstock to create electricity. So if we bring that back and we brought all the waste in my part of the world, all the waste that came from Dallas and just say Dallas Fort Worth into one centralized site, well, then you can put it through a big searching process called a material recycling facility, whereby you'd pull out all the bottles and plastic bottles, you pull out all the glass bottles, you pull out all the paper, and you put those into streams to be recycled. But even some of the hazardous stuff like batteries and all the stuff we all throw into our trash that's not supposed to go there. And, what are you going to do with the battery? We all throw them away, say we're supposed to take them somewhere, but it's ridiculous. IT gear, things like that. As you filter it out of a centralized trash configuration, you can put it into recyclable streams at scale. And then it makes sense to run that stuff into different materials to be brought up the backside of this large recycling center, if you will, and put back into the market to be used again.
Right.
The way we do it today, of the joke of separate my recyclables, and then when they get to the landfill, they just go in with all the rest of the landfill, and I've wasted all this time pulling out plastics and paper and stuff that they're just throwing in the landfill many times. I
Yeah.
think the idea is don't leave the consumer responsible for separating everything. Throw it all into one bin, which would be a savings on collection. One truck comes around, gets it all in a single waste stream, and then it's separated at the material recycling facility, where you have electronics that help you pick out where the bottles are and flip them out into
Right.
a stream to be recycled. And you get to scale where it makes sense to take that plastic and melt it down, if you will, to be reused into new plastic bottles or make it into pellets to be sold back to Coca-Cola, cleaned and processed and everything for new bottles. Same with the aluminum. I mean, when you get to
Yeah.
scale, you can do so much with that waste. Once you put it into a clean waste stream, that's the key. But that's what we seek to do, and we're out there trying to do that in many communities in the US. Europe is way ahead, of course, of us.
Oh
They
yeah, that's pretty typical
actually,
though.
yeah, yep. So
Yeah, it's
Europe
kind of
took our waste energy technology and they use it throughout Europe to create electricity. They even import garbage into different countries in Europe to use it for electricity production.
I know, and it's kind of funny that you brought that up because if you think about it, well, there's so many things in what you just said. Like one of them is when you're talking about recycling, and I was reading a story about a lady who wanted to know if her garbage really went to the right places. So she put air tags like in an aluminum can, and then
Right.
maybe stuck to a piece of cardboard and went right to the landfill and just sat there. So when you're thinking, you're right. When you leave that responsibility to people, I think there are many, many, many people that really want to do the right thing and they want to make sure their garbage goes to the right place. And then you have these little AA batteries that we all have for our remote controllers, and it's like, really, what am I going to do with this if I can't put it in recycling? I can't put it in garbage. I don't think we have that knowledge, but to turn all of the garbage, because we are one wasteful society, right? To turn all of
Oh,
that
yes.
garbage into breaks on electricity, and you're also kind of helping the grid in a couple of ways. Like, hey, maybe we should update it. Maybe there's some money for that, and it gives us a break on paying for that. So I know it's kind of about making money for the utility companies, but there has to be some give and take. And I think that's really important for us as American citizens because we tend to be the most wasteful in the world. So, you know,
Yeah, I think we are. And it's just this kind of higher end community on the planet that is the Western world where we have
right.
access to all these great things.
Yeah.
But as other parts of the world try to come up to the same level as Western society or other developed nations, the thing that I see uh, is the pressure that puts on resources, whether that's just timber for construction or concrete, plastics,
Land.
fuels, all the different land, all the different things that are going to be there.
Yeah.
The more that we can take something that would go into the landfill and just be buried and hopefully be forgotten, but usually leaches out into the water and causes toxicity to the water that we're drinking. Rather than doing that, I think it's far better to put the time in to recycle those pieces and those, say, plastic bottles and have them run through a process where they're put back into pellets to be sold back to the bottling companies rather than
Yeah.
creating more plastic, reusing what we already have. And I think one of the things that we're going to have to think about as a world in the next 20, 30 years. There's just not enough material anymore. We're going to have to go mine landfills and find some more plastics and paper and stuff that we should have been doing now. So
Yeah, I agree.
All right, okay. So before we wrap this up, I got two questions. Where, if I were an organization looking to work with Seabury, where do I go? And how do I get started?
I think the best place is to go to our website and our contact information is there. And we reach out to different um, communities in the United States right now. We're involved with a number of them, trying to recycle the waste that's produced. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do. And if a business is looking to try and mitigate its carbon footprint, we have many ways to do that. And all you need to do is go to our website, and there'll be a lot of information that our web genius Sierra has put on there that you can learn about and then reach out to us for a deeper dive.
Awesome, awesome. You heard it here first.